Okay, welcome to this explainer. Today we're taking a look at a massive, complex piece of history, but we're going to keep it simple. Think of this as the ultimate high school history lesson on how diverse groups across India united to challenge colonial rule. We're going to explore how a nation of millions, deeply divided by class, religion, and geography, somehow found a way to stand absolutely together.
Before we get into the details, here is our roadmap for the era. We'll start with the seeds of Indian nationalism, then move to Gandhi and Satyagraha, take a really close look at the Rowlatt Act and Jallianwala Bagh, explore the non-cooperation movement, follow the Salt March, and finally, look at forging one national identity.
All right, first up, Section 1, Seeds of Indian Nationalism, Shared Struggles.
If we look at the timeline from 1913 to 1930, you can literally see the pressure building. We have pre-World War marches in 1913. Then, between 1918 and 1921, crop failures and epidemics hit hard. The Rowlatt Act is passed in 1919. By 1921, non-cooperation is launched, which eventually leads up to the 1930 Salt March. Now, we usually think of nationalism as just loving your country, right? But in India, the feeling of being one nation was actually born out of shared misery. The First World War created this massive economic crisis. The British financed their war through heavy loans and hiking up taxes on everyday Indians. Prices of basic goods doubled. Add forced army recruitment, devastating crop failures, and an influenza epidemic into the mix, and you've got a pressure cooker. This shared oppression unintentionally bonded the people together because they were all suffering under the exact same system.
Moving on to Section 2, Gandhi and Satyagraha, a new method. Into this volatile mix steps a total catalyst, Mahatma Gandhi, and he brings back a brand new method of fighting back. Let's read this line by line. Satyagraha is defined as a novel method of mass agitation, emphasizing the power of truth and the need to search for truth through non-violent active resistance. The absolutely crucial word there is active. It wasn't about just sitting back passively and taking abuse. It was intense, active resistance built entirely on non-violence. Gandhi believed that if your cause was true, you didn't need physical force to fight the oppressor.
Next up is Section 3, the Rowlatt Act and Jallianwala Bagh, the turning point.
Okay, we really need to slow down and focus here on 1919 because this is the exact moment the relationship between the British and the Indians fractured beyond repair. The British passed the Rowlatt Act, and get this, they passed it despite totally united Indian opposition. It granted enormous powers to repress political activities and allowed detention of political prisoners without trial for 2 years. Just imagine living under a government that suddenly grants itself the power to lock you up for 2 years without a trial. It violates every basic concept of justice. This hurriedly passed act is exactly what sparked nationwide panic.
You can just feel the tension in the air. British soldiers patrolling an empty street as martial law is enforced. Alarmed by the huge popular upsurge, like railway workers striking and shops closing down, the British clamped down hard. They barred local leaders from moving around, stopped Gandhi from entering Delhi, and in places like Amritsar, they imposed strict military rule. General Dyer took command, which set the stage for a truly horrific climax.
On April 13th, the infamous Jallianwala Bagh incident took place. A large, unarmed crowd had gathered in an enclosed ground. Many were just innocent villagers attending an annual fair, completely unaware that martial law had even been declared. General Dyer entered, systematically blocked the only exits, and ordered his troops to open fire on the trapped, peaceful crowd without any warning whatsoever. Hundreds were killed. His chilling goal, in his own words, was to produce a moral effect, to create in the minds of satyagrahis a feeling of terror and awe. But instead of terrifying them into submission, this brutal massacre became the ultimate turning point. It ignited outright, nationwide rebellion. Which brings us to Section 4, the non-cooperation movement. A nation mobilizes.
Following the brutal humiliations of Jallianwala Bagh, Gandhi realized they needed a broader movement to unite Hindus and Muslims. So how did different groups react? Well, for the urban middle class, students left schools, lawyers resigned, and foreign goods were boycotted and even burned in massive bonfires. Meanwhile, out in the countryside, peasants and tribals defied forest laws, refused land revenue, and believed Gandhi Raj would redistribute land. So you have this incredibly united movement, but the specific ideas of freedom looked very different depending on who you asked. They all fought under the same banner, but with their own local hopes.
Let's move to Section 5, the Salt March, civil disobedience.
By 1930, the movement needed a new, undeniable symbol, and that symbol was salt. The famous Salt March happened in 3 clear steps. First, Gandhi sends 11 wide-ranging demands to Viceroy Irwin. Second, volunteers undertake a massive 240-mile march to Dandi. And third, Gandhi ceremonially boils seawater to manufacture salt, breaking British law. Now, why salt? It seems so mundane, right? But Gandhi realized that salt was consumed by everyone, the rich and the absolute poorest. It was an essential item. The British had a monopoly on it and heavily taxed it. So by simply boiling seawater, Gandhi committed a highly visible, brilliant act of defiance.
Just look at the sheer scale of mobilization here. Ordinary citizens literally taking to the streets to defy colonial rule. This wasn't just a few politicians in a closed room. This was thousands upon thousands of everyday people. And what's absolutely crucial to note is that women participated in unprecedented numbers. They stepped out of their homes to march, manufacture salt, and picket shops. And despite facing police firing and the imprisonment of roughly 100,000 people, the protesters remained remarkably peaceful.
Finally, we reach Section 6, Forging One National Identity, Collective Belonging. So beyond the political protests, how did Indians actually forge a sense of being one single nation? Well, unifying the nation required some powerful cultural processes. Let's look at the list. Visualizing the nation as the mother figure Bharat Mata. Reviving Indian folklore, village tales, and national literature. Designing unifying symbols like the tricolor Swaraj flag with a spinning wheel. And reinterpreting ancient history to instill pride against British claims of Indian backwardness. Nationalists actively used these cultural tools to stitch communities together, fighting back against British narratives by highlighting glorious ancient achievements in science and math. Check out the historic imagery from this time. In early prints like this one of Bal Gangadhar Tilak, leaders were often surrounded by sacred symbols of unity. Look in the background, you can see a temple, a church, and a masjid. This is a literal illustration of collective belonging. It was a visual reminder that despite incredibly deep cultural and religious differences, the path to a free nation required all these groups to stand united within one frame.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want you to ask yourself, how does a nation of so many different voices, classes, and conflicts ultimately forge a unified path to freedom? The journey from the horrors of Jallianwala Bagh to the triumph of independence certainly wasn't a straight line. It was messy, it was filled with internal debates, and immense sacrifices. Reflect on how overcoming those intense internal differences was just as crucial to India's independence as defying the British Empire itself. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. Keep questioning the history around you, and I'll see you in the next explainer.